Hello everyone. Since this is either a highlight, a standalone book, or the first episode in a series, I'm jumping in to remind you what the rules are for this podcast. First rule is, no real people stories. That means that any details from our own lives are merely anecdotal, we do not read books about real people, and we are not reading historical fiction. The second rule is that we are basing our analyses off of how the author treats characters and what they put them through. We are not judging the accuracy of the trauma, the accuracy of any actual conditions that may be portrayed, nor the authenticity of a character's reaction to that trauma or that particular condition. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts are not trained professionals, and their opinions come solely from personal experience. In this episode, we discuss fictional depictions of trauma and violence that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please take care of yourselves. Specific content warnings for each episode can be found in the show notes. Events in the media are discussed in approximate order of escalation. This episode contains spoilers.
The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin is a book about coming of age and a protagonist who shapes her own power and destiny. Hi, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Robin, and today we're discussing The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. For our factions, we have Yeine Dar, we have the Aramiri, there are several of them, we have Dakarta, Ralad, Shimina, Varain, Tavril, Kenneth, and Ygreth. Then for gods and godlings, we have Intempus, Nahadoth, Enepha, and Sia. For the minor character spotlight, we are bundling together a couple of characters going from the least dramatic to the most dramatic, dramatic and traumatic, depictions of enslavement and various forms of constraint in a negative context. Not all of these are technically enslavement, but they're on the same scale, and they all are distressing and traumatic,
well,
and so...
I would go as far as to say maybe they are, because
What's that maybe?
Well, I think it depends on whether you consider the family as government owning everyone on their little...
Right, because if they're a family, then a lot of families demand things out of family members that they wouldn't demand out of other people. And if you look at them as the government, yeah, it's enslavement, no question.
But that's the thing is, I don't think you can separate the two. I think the family is the government, and higher ranking members of the family have enslaved the lower ranking members and treat them as property.
Well, okay, then everybody on this scale is in some kind of enslavement.
Yeah, I think it really is, because the way that it is portrayed in the text, there is no such thing as saying no if someone has a higher rank tattoo than yours, and the people that have full circles do whatever they want with whoever they want and treat everyone else as an object created to serve them. Like, that is how they act.
And we do learn that even the people who are in the family but are not called to Sky, that's part of a strategy in order to keep generating more members of the family who can be called to Sky. So, yeah. Okay, I agree with your assessment that everybody on this spectrum is in some type of enslavement. So, our first person, the only one whom I considered potentially not to be enslaved, though I have been convinced, is Tavril. Tavril,
yeah, because he cannot leave and he has no free will. For his whole entire life.
Yeah, I mean, he can decide to do something that would make them mad and they kill him. So in that sense, he has...
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
But that has not... Yeah, but that's not...
In a philosophical sense, he has free will. In a practical sense, it doesn't feel like it.
Any slave throughout history has the free will to do something they're not allowed to do and get killed for it, though, Robin.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything.
Sorry, listening to too many philosophy things, you said free will, and I was like, you mean no good options. And I will heartily agree he has no good options. Yeah. So, Tavril, he has to work for the family. He has a lot of responsibility, but not very much power. So he has some power over people who have a lesser blood scale level than he does. And there's some, like, squishiness on exactly what they mean by full blood, because our main character is canonically half-blood. Like, unless the family gets very incestuous, even full-blood people usually are gonna be half-blood, so it's more like I think it's a ruling recognition.
This is where we get into the whole the family is the government thing. And you know, we have not, you know, as much I would love to. I'd love to hear the ins and outs of exactly how this is like functions, just even more details on the books give us, but the way it seems to be that the blood that the genetic code, the blood that you get by being born with the family genetics, the family line, is what gets you into the family. But the how much related like whether you're half blood or full blood or what degree, what partial you get is maybe a little bit indicated by who you're actually related to. But really, practically, it's who is in power when you are given the tattoo that signifies your rank.
Yeah, and like, I mean, like it's a
literal magical tattoo. Foreheads. Yeah. So, like, yeah, if you have somebody who is the lowest rank of, like, an 8th or whatever, we don't actually know what the lowest partial is that they have. But, you know, if that person has a child, chances are that child will get that same rank or lower, but that's not guaranteed.
Right.
So, and our main character is canonically the grandchild of the current ruler. So it would make sense that her crescent is, you know, like logically it would make sense it's either a quarter or lower, or, you know, not ruling out marrying into the family, so to speak. And she would at least be half or lower, except that when she didn't have a crest, or she didn't have a tattoo when she was born or when she was little. We don't know exactly when kids get them. And so her grandfather, who is the ruler, said, "We're going to give you a full blood crescent now as an adult." So it's very much a position. It's very much a choice on behalf of who is in charge.
Yeah, and we're talking about like bloods and levels and things, and I want to be clear, relating to real world stuff, this is neither blood quantum nor is it the one drop rule.
No.
But some things in this book might be uncomfortable for people who have trauma related to either of those two things. But it's also a fictional, magical exploration within this family where they have this weird set of rules where if you have one drop, we will control you. But if you don't have enough, you don't get power.
Yeah, you can't control others.
Yeah, so it's actually this bizarre combination of both of those, some elements of both of those real-world ideas in one thing, and it's a very interesting, like, setup as a story to read. But just in case anyone has, like, stuff related to that, this description, all these levels and percentages that we're talking about, and the way the book talks about it, it could be uncomfortable, so I just want to mention that.
Actually,
because there's a lot of this discussion.
So it's not really. It's really kind of interesting that these books have those themes, because the little bit that I actually did look up this author when we found this series, And the little bit we know of N.K. Jemisin, just off of her, like, Wikipedia page, she's an American author. She's an American author of color. And she has worked as a psychologist, a counseling psychologist. And part of her, like, there's just an overall theme, according to the wiki, of cultural conflict and oppression in her books. So she's an American author of color who works as a psychologist. And so the fact that she put, like, this intricate, interesting take on blending those two things into the setup and the structure of this series, it's just really cool, I think. And I think it definitely, like, makes sense that it would be, like, those two things are something she would pull on. And also, like, the way she uses them, like, just the fact that, you know, she's worked as a counseling psychologist, it makes sense that, like, it I don't know, it makes reading book one make a lot of sense, because it's kind of like, oh, that's why you're able to, like, explore this weird, cool twist on this thing and how it would affect people, and it's really interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really well put together, and if I didn't, it doesn't read like, oh, we're gonna critique these two systems, but also it definitely feels like you could completely use this as an example of critiquing those other systems.
I wasn't trying to say that it was not critiquing, it was the other, like, systems. I just think it's really interesting that the way that informed by
yeah.
I mean. That's a good way of putting it. It's not directly those two things.
Yeah.
But it's a very cool, very interesting setup. Oh, and also I do want to point out, because we're talking about like half-blood and full-blood, and, like, marrying, what if you married someone else in the family, and, like, this family as the government is kind of like hinted, and they don't give you, like, a population count, but everyone who lives and works in this giant floating city called Sky is family. There are probably hundreds or thousands of family members. Like, we're not looking at you would have to commit incest to marry into the family. Like, the family is the city. And everyone in it. So,
and as I mentioned previously, like, we are told that they have lower members of the family elsewhere so that they can marry and, like, bring in fresh blood from outside and, like, have, you know, more variants. So this topic is, so we've talked about some of the structure that makes this enslavement happen, but I want to make sure we get to talk about a couple of the particular people. So we've talked about Trevorrow. He has the very basic level of he's part of this family and can't not be. Then we have a duo. I'm okay with either talking about them separately or as a duo. We have Naha and Nahadoth.
I think we should talk about them as a duo because literally you can't talk about one without the other.
Yeah, so Naha is the human body in which Nahadoth, the god, is constrained. So, but Naha has separate consciousness. He has separate wants, desires, everything, except he is the flesh prison for a god, which means he's humiliated and tortured for things that almost all of the time he didn't do. Like, even if it's like, oh, we're doing something to you because you talked back or did this. Well, maybe he talked back because he feels really terrible because he's the flesh prison for a god. Like, everything comes back to he's being hurt because he is someone else's prison. And he also lives in terror of waking up and finding bodies around him. Not in the abstract, just it has happened before and he lives in terror of it happening again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Nahadoth, who is the god who was constrained by his brother god in Tempest, and He's trapped in flesh. He can be hurt, but he won't die. And he is both completely able to kill all of them and magically constrained from hurting any of them unless one of them tells them to kill them.
So the part with these two that's important to enslavement, other than just their identities,
yes,
is that both of them are magically constrained to obey anything that a member of the family tells them to do. And now, much like Yeine mythos, or Jinn mythos, or Fae mythos a little bit, if you
as
kind
this
of
reminded me. This reminds me of the Fae so much. This whole book.
There's a very literal component here where if you tell them to do something, they are perfectly free to misconstrue the intent of your order and do what they really want to do if they can find a way to make it fit the letter of what you say. But within literal restrictions, they have to do what they are told by members of the family, high or low. And if they're given contrary orders or contradicting orders, then the person who is of a higher rank is the one who kind of gets followed.
And there's at least one very memorable time where this happens, where Yeine asked Nahadoth to do something, and he says, "I can't. It would go against this order."
Yeah.
This order from Dakarta, who is over everything.
Yeah. So yeah, that's their. They have I mean, everybody is. Well, I guess some other members of the family are not magically enslaved necessarily, but like these guys are magically enslaved.
Yeah, they're magically enslaved, and the way they have to obey like everybody unless it contradicts someone else's orders. It's really interesting because I'm trying to think. It's one of those like I don't know how much their ability to want to do something else is constrained because like I don't know. There isn't enough here to make it super clear one way or the other. Like we mostly get language when some constraints are lifted of them, Nahadoth being able to like be fully himself again, that like implies maybe that there might have been some like limited ability to want to be otherwise, but I don't know. It's not nearly as clear as it was with a character like, say, Mogget from the Old Kingdom. There it was extremely clear. But I don't know. I hope we get more as this series goes on. That I just started wondering about that because when we talk about enslavement, with other books we've talked about mental manipulation and like altered states of mind as forms of trauma and control, and I would be surprised if that isn't at play here. But if it is, it's not explicit, and so we can't really
we just don't know yet. We'll find out.
We don't know. Yeah, but in terms of mental stuff, that definitely is a constraint here. Nahadoth appears to be able to remember all 24 hours of the day, and Naha only knows what's happening when the human bit is awake. He doesn't know what's happening at night when Nahadoth is in charge. And so that it's not quite an altered cognition. It's more like
he describes it as just being asleep. He's just magically asleep when Nahadoth is out.
Yeah.
And Nahadoth is definitely the one of the two of them that is in charge. Like when he is awake, he is the one who's like in charge of their body and doing things, and Naha is definitely the afterthought.
Yeah, there's a lot of people treating him like he is Nahadoth.
Yeah.
Kind of. Because it was really confusing earlier in the book, for me at least, where I was like, what's going on? Didn't understand the flesh prison thing. And I was like, why is he only powerful as soon as it's dark? And if that's the case, why are you torturing him until literally sundown? That doesn't seem smart.
Yeah,
that seems like a terrible plan. And then it made sense.
Yeah.
All right. Last enslavement bit. We have nameless guy in a pit. Somehow we left this as, not somehow, I understand why I picked this, that we have this as the most traumatic in terms of the depiction in the book, of these minor characters with enslavement. And I want to say the description that's from the book of what's going on with this guy. The state that I'm about to describe is the result after he was used for an evening's entertainment by the Arameri at a party. Take a human being, twist and stretch his limbs like clay, add new limbs designed for gods know what purpose, bring some of his innards out of his body, yet leave them all working, seal up his mouth, and, Skyfather, god of all gods, and the worst was this, I could still see intelligence and awareness in the distorted eyes. They had not even allowed him the escape of insanity. So, yeah, this person was trapped. There's magical shenanigans going on where they need him to die in order for this magical stone to be moved. But in the meantime, while he's waiting in a pit to be killed later that week, why not just torture him at this party by taking his organs out of his body but not letting him die? And then he's also constrained such that if he doesn't do the thing they want him to do, then his lover will share his fate. And I don't know if that means die or if that means have all the limb and organ stretching stuff happen. And I don't think it matters which one of the two, other than one of them makes me more squeamish and the other one just makes me sad.
I mean, not spoilers, not sharing what his fate eventually is. But I really think it's just, if he won't do the thing, if he doesn't survive to do the thing they need, then she will. I think that's what it means. Now, not to say they won't torture her for fun, but I don't think it's necessarily...
I'd assumed it was a woman, and I looked at the text, and it doesn't actually say the gender of the lover. But don't know either way. Yeah,
I didn't remember, because you had said wife earlier.
Oh yeah, no, I thought it had said something more gendered, and then it doesn't. But either way, it would not be good for his lover.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot more details about Nameless Pit Guy other than this is kind of sort of the upper bounds of how torturous and terrible the enslavement is within this system and within this city, where someone is already slated to die, and just for kicks at a party, they do this to him. On to Yeine and ostracization and isolation. The way that Yeine was ostracized growing up in Dar made her way more sensitive to it in Sky.
Yeah, she has a history, and she doesn't really go into a lot of detail, but she kind of picks isolated incidents of places where she felt like she had to prove herself more than anybody else. Even when she was in things like the whatever the program was where she was training to be a warrior, she always felt like she had to be better, do better, be stronger. faster, than her compatriots in order to kind of be enough. There's this one moment where she actually didn't follow through on what was the custom in Dar, and you get a very much of like a feel of a book where like the fact that she didn't do that was something that she never really like it really mattered, and it wasn't just a choice she was making. It was definitely something that made her feel like, well, maybe I didn't do this right.
And that was the coming of age challenge, right?
Yeah. It was weird reading that section because it was like she was very clearly thought that her choice was the right one, but she also talks about how it made her kind of separate from the group in a weird way.
Like, they couldn't say she didn't do enough, but they also didn't like what she did.
Yeah.
And also, like, there's a lot of stuff about her not being enough for her grandmother, like, never feeling like she could do enough to be Dar enough. And we actually find out that right when she was born, a whole bunch of people were murdered by Nahadoth.
Yeah.
And it was basically like anybody who was trying to get information or would have reported back to her grandmother. So she didn't know about this until partway through this book when she's an adult. But definitely I'm not surprised that her grandmother was very, very suspicious of her when she lost like a large, at least a significant portion of her household was just murdered right as her granddaughter is born. Like, that's gotta make your feelings complicated, let alone that her mother is Aramari instead of Dar.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. Especially there's kind of like hints of her, just like, I mean, she kind of talks about like the Aramari being very like pale skinned and Dar being very, very dark.
I like your pronunciation better. That was. Can you say that again? I'll try and get
Aramari?
it. Aramari. Yeah, that feels much better. Mine's
then
not
what?
Aramari?
No.
Aramari is much better. All right.
Talked before about how you and I pronounce names in books incredibly like differently. Oh,
yeah,
man.
Topic 1, I just tried not to say their name.
Armory is an interesting take, though. Alright. Honestly, I don't know that I've much else with that one.
Well, also, like, there's this weird way where she's trying to, like, cling to her identity as Dar. Like, even in, like, the end notes for the book, it lists her name as Yeine Dar. Like, she desperately is clinging to this identity, even though growing up, everyone around her didn't want her to have it. And then, and then when she actually goes to Sky, it feels like that means she didn't belong there. And then, pivoting to her place in Sky, they don't want her there either. Like, she thinks that she's there to be the heir, and then almost immediately finds out that no, she's one of 3, and then pretty soon after that figures out that not only is she one of 3, they don't intend her to be a serious contender. And in a way, I feel like that might have been a little bit easier, because there in Sky, she doesn't have to, like, she does worry about it, but in ways that are more related to her relationship with her mom. Like, I'll talk about that in a second. But
yeah, well, in our next topic.
Yeah, our next topic, we'll talk about that with her mother more. But here, in Dar, it seemed like she thought that maybe something was someday going to be enough.
Yeah.
In Sky, she doesn't really have that illusion. She kind of knows that she has a very, very brief window where she thinks that maybe she's going to be accepted. And it pretty quickly pivots to, no, this is a nest of vipers.
Yeah.
They don't like me. They don't want me here.
She talks about, too, how she's kind of feeling like being sent to Sky and everyone in Dar kind of going, oh, good, that's where you belong, kind of like, of course you are. You're going, you know, that kind of...
Right, of course you're leaving. You were never one of us.
You were only kind of here. Very much feels like a nail in the coffin of, like, any hope that she was really wanted. And there's a couple of scenes in the book where she actually, you know, the one time she does go back to Dar where she's really treated as a stranger. And she has to she kind of calls them out on that and is like, hey, why are you talking to me that way? Like, I fought next to you. I served next to you. I was literally part of your group. Why are you doing this to me? And then they do, like, this almost very exaggerated, like, oh, yeah, of course, it's you.
Yeah.
It's just, she's just very cut off and alone in this entire book.
And also at the Armary, like, everybody in Sky wants something from her, but you can't trust that anyone actually cares about her. And as she's, like, forming these bonds and she's getting in a little bit, she's getting in mostly with the Ennethada. And she spends several days of her last week alive recovering from having been needed for the Ennethada and just various other things. Mostly the Ennethada. But even then, there's this, like, she really has to, like, decide that she's just gonna trust. She's just gonna say, okay, if they don't actually care about me, there isn't really anything I can do about it. So I'm just gonna act like maybe they actually do and go from there. Because also she's starting to care about them too. And, like, talking about ostracization, but she really is starting to feel like maybe she belongs, but it's got this weird ticking clock, because this is her last, like, week alive.
Yeah.
It's her last week alive because eventually she realizes she was only even invited back to Sky as a sacrifice. So not only is she... It's got this... Like, that kind of completes this weird journey of thinking she's there as it, discovering she's just one of several. Then she just thinks she's the, like, the underdog, but she's got a chance. And then it's like, oh, no, they just brought me back to kill me.
You were just here because we needed someone dispensable. But yeah, it's this really... honestly, so here's the thing, and we'll talk about this more in the wrap-up, like, it's, as a reader, I didn't feel like I was cut off and alone with her.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very much of a journey of her being just kind of all by herself all the time and figuring out how to try and live and survive with that. And it, like, it was really interesting because, like, a lot of books that I read that the main character, you know, that's a big thing that they go through is feeling like they're cut off and alone. The authors generally, and at least in the books that I've had experience with, generally do that by making the reader feel very alone. And this book does a really good job of the character being all alone, and you know they're all alone, but you as a reader are not.
Well, this didn't feel lonely. This felt like reading about this, like, super cool place and really, really interesting people.
Yeah.
It was not a lonely reading experience.
No, not at all. But I think that is worth noting just because it's different and I think it was done really, really well.
Yeah. Moving on to Yeine and the atmosphere of cruelty, specifically in Sky.
Yeah.
So one of the things that keeps happening throughout this book, it's like, ever like tell like a have you ever been around people who will tell like a really weird joke just to watch you kind of be horrified? Like, I know you have. I know we're related to someone who does this. But listeners, you know how sometimes people will tell jokes and they're just watching to see you just kind of get grossed out or squirm, and they're like, what? I'm just like this. You're the one who's weird. That's happening in Sky. Except it's like, what? You don't like murder? You're so... How
could
so
you?
Squeamish. How is that? No, you gotta, like, do, like, a murder. Like, you know... But, oh, no, don't get your hands dirty. Like, tell somebody else to do them. It's much funny. It's much better that way. Okay, yeah. But as to what's, like, specifically in the book, like, the way we talked about exactly who Naha is and his relationship to Nahadoth in segment 1, and Yeine gets introduced to Naha and kind of have him, like, sicked on her right as he's about to turn into Nahadoth. And at this point in the book, Nahadoth is murderous thing. Don't be out after dark or he'll kill you. We can't control him. We've also been kind of torturing him all day long, so he will be upset and he will murder you.
Like, this will happen.
Go run. Like, literally run. Like, and that's kind of like the start of this. It ends up positive because she ends up, like, getting her in with Nahadoth and all the Enifada, but it was intended to scare her at minimum and possibly kill her as a bonus. It's hard to know whether Shamina wanted her to die at this point, because it's not like she would have had permission from Dakarta to kill Yeine, but we also don't know that she wasn't hoping for that. It's like, that's a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah.
And then we also told you who the pit guy is in topic 1. In case you skipped that topic, the pit guy is in a pit with his organs on his outside and limbs rearranged and extra limbs, and he's still alive, and he is waiting to get to die, basically. And when Varaine shows her the pit guy, like, there's several, like, moments where Yeine, like, is, like, she knows something terrible is in the pit, and she doesn't want to look, and she's kind of avoiding looking. And isn't there a bit where Varaine, like, says... Doesn't he call her out on avoiding it? I'm trying to remember.
He does. He does a couple different times. I don't remember the exact wording.
Look, it had the feeling of, like, why aren't you looking? You should be strong enough to handle this. Something.
Yeah, he calls her out on it. He basically calls her out for being squeamish, and her like, internal monologue response is something along the lines of, I'm trying to respect him by protecting the little dignity he has left.
Mm-hmm.
And Varaine's just like, Varaine's whole commentary is basically like, ha ha ha, look at him and laugh. And, like, you know, you're not even as strong as your mother. Your mother would have done this herself. And, like, Yeine is just like, no, I'm trying to, like, not shame him more.
And this is...
That happens a couple times.
And
in that moment.
His current condition is actually kind of the aftermath of a party that Yeine had been warned away from by Tavril because he basically told her he wouldn't want to be around them. And I agree with Tavril. That was terrible. But she doesn't escape getting to see this just because she avoided the entertainment and the actual moment. Also, I use the word entertainment because he was the entertainment at least part of the entertainment at the party. So, with them kind of horrifying her on purpose and then saying, you're squeamish, that means you're weak, she eventually kind of turns this around on Jakarta when she accuses him of killing his wife, which he did. She
was right.
Yeah, she was right. His wife filled the role that Yeine is being asked to fill this time around, which involves dying. And he was kind of just like speechless and affronted that she would bring this up to him. And there's this kind of, like, it ends up being like a more powerful moment, but it's on the heels of her, like, just having all this just really, really horrific stuff throughout the book.
Yeah, there's a real thread here of just, like, other people being very amused and making really belittling, degrading comments about her not being cruel and just not understanding why she's not cruel to other people intentionally. And not even like she's intentionally not cruel, like she's just not like this and they don't get it. They also bring up her mom a lot. So the fact that her mom married someone not from Sky, married someone not of the Automary, is like a big point of contention, like there with just her identity and how she's treated. And it's kind of a big deal here because her own memories of her mom are very much of someone who kind of instilled in her the values that she has of being kind and being respectful and being, and fighting for everyone and caring about the lowest of society and, things that are cruel being mitigated in some way. And it's kind of funky with the little bit we learn about Dar's society too, where there's some like things where it very much reads as her having instilled values from her mom, and then she's compared to her mom, and every comparison that they bring up in Sky just doesn't even match with how her mom was in her memory. She's told she's not a full Automary, she's not cruel enough, she's not calculating enough, and then she's, told, well, your mother would have killed them without a second glance. Like, your mom would have helped me with this torture, and you can't even look at it. Like, there's this very, like, it's this really weird setup where she's traumatized by the things that she's being told that should be part of her, and it's kind of a double hit when she's being told, like, the person that you thought the best of in your life would have done all of these atrocities and more, and you can't even look. It's very, very, the thing is, like, it's not gaslighting, it's that these people just have a different view of her mother than she did. Well, but it very much adds to the trauma.
It's probably at least partly that, like, since it's been so long since they've seen her, they have, like, a rose-colored glasses, like, nostalgia view, except they are so cruel that their nostalgia view is, like, your mother was never weak.
Oh, I honestly fully believe it's not rose-colored glasses. I think her mom was that person.
No, I just... They having it be, not that she was that, but that she was never kind... Like,
that they just weren't.
Right,
it just wasn't.
I'm sure all of the cruelty was there.
Yeah,
but saying that she was never anything else.
Yeah,
that it's harder to trust because, like, they are not reliable narrators.
Yeah.
They're very self-interested. I think they're probably, like, 80 to 90% trustworthy, but when it's something like, and you know what, your mom would have helped me torture that puppy, it's like, you know what, slow down. To be clear, they didn't say specifically about puppies, but, like, there's a point at which, it has kind of that vibe.
Yeah.
Where it's like, she would have been so cruel. And, like, even the bit where, he is Varane, when Varane says that, her mother was so subtle with insults that you wouldn't realize that she'd insulted you until hours later. And, Yeine says, well, my mom, the mom I knew didn't really have to insult people. What do you do? I really liked
that was a really
moment.
good. That was one of my favorites too. Actually, she's just like, ooh, that says something about you. Actually, just very funny.
On to the wrap-up and ratings for the gratuity rating for Enslavement.
I actually think severe.
We had several different examples and we kind of ramped them up, and I think we should judge this topic by the most severe example that we discussed.
I honestly think even our more, like, quote-unquote benign or mild or whatever you want to call them examples were still pretty severe. I don't actually think we have a non-severe example on here, so I don't think it matters which one we use.
So, do you think that they're severe, or do you think they rise to the level of torture porn?
I think literal torture porn, actually.
Oh, okay, alright.
I think that is a literal, actual thing in here.
No, that's true. No, that's actually what's happening. I wasn't thinking of it like that because a lot of it is off screen, but there's just enough of it on screen to, yep, that's what's happening. So yes, that literally is in this book. Not expecting, well, I wasn't thinking of that. Okay, for the ostracization, best word to say. So good.
This is Robin's favorite word. This episode.
It's not. Ostracization. We'll get there.
I think I vote moderate.
Yeah, like, it's in this depiction. It's a lot.
Actually, no. Yeah.
Like,
I'm in between severe but treated with care and moderate.
I have a couple of ideas that would have made it severe. That didn't happen. Like, she was able to go talk to people almost whenever she wanted. There was one person who kept, like, ducking her visits for a bit. But it wasn't like she couldn't go talk to people.
That's true. She wasn't being, like, bullied out of anything.
She wasn't physically isolated. They just had structural things that meant she wasn't going to get a foothold in Sky. And the potential, whatever level of ostracization happened when she was growing up in Dar, we didn't have it on screen. And so I think this ends up being moderate with a lot implied as backstory.
Okay.
So you can picture whatever level in the background you think maybe happened.
Yeah.
But we don't have it in front of us.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess it's the kind of thing where, like, me filling in the gaps. But that's the whole point, is that I have to fill in those gaps. They're not explicitly laid out in the text. Okay. So, alright. So, moderate backstory. Okay. Yep. Cool. Atmosphere of cruelty. I think this is severe at the least.
Yeah, I think this is severe. I think that we can't double count the same event for both enslavement and cruelty as torture porn. I think it is more relevant.
I was wondering
more relevant as enslavement.
Yeah, I was wondering what you would say about that.
Yeah.
Okay, severe it is. All right. Slavery. Integral, interchangeable, irrelevant.
It is integral.
It's literally the plot.
Yeah, it's the plot. You could have ditched some of the mortal elements of it.
Yeah.
But
as a theme,
are enslaved is the point of the entire story.
It's the setup for their entire, like, functional existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the ostracization.
I think that's also... It's either integral or interchangeable, because it sets up, like, her as a
I think it's interchangeable,
person.
because they didn't have to freeze her out. And, like, that's part of, like, the way we said that this was moderate, I think.
Yeah.
Those are tied together. Almost all of this could have been the same without her being frozen out. But, like, something is going on here. It didn't have to be, nah, we didn't want you. The cruelty, I think it is integral because it's part of what pushes a lot of motivations. Like, if they weren't cruel, the gods might not have been making the moves they were. Or we might have seen the gods as bad for making the moves they are. Which would have changed the plot significantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's room to fiddle with details. But it is integral to the plot that they are.
Yeah, because that atmosphere of cruelty is really, really just setting up the society. It's not necessarily... Like, the plot could have existed independently. The plot could exist in a slightly different city or different setup.
Oh, is this your argument for interchangeable?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Forgot to say that part.
Okay. Because I said integral, and then you said we could have done something different. Okay. So,
I'm almost... Oh, that's where I'm like... Because they could have kept them enslaved without the blatant reveling in hurting.
Okay.
Like, that could have been... Like, there's countless stories that exist that are like that, where some, especially magical deity or being, is enslaved in a magical sense, but no one is like... Our first series...
tricky because...
Our first series that we put up as an episode... In the Old Kingdom...
Oh, yeah.
Mogget was enslaved. Mogget was not harmed by most of the people that we saw on screen. Ever.
Right.
But that didn't make him not a slave. But
right.
no one was torturing Mogget.
And it doesn't stop slavery as a thing from being cruel. But in terms of this atmosphere of cruelty.
Right.
Where no one is safe.
Yep.
God or no, slave or no.
Yes. Very, very different things.
That's different from it being a cruel institution. Okay, makes sense.
And the plot itself does not hinge upon this cruelty. It's just a thing that is here in this story. It's done really well, but it's a separate thing. All right.
Treated with care.
You know, weirdly enough, I think the slavery is.
Yeah. Most
Which is
of the
wild to say.
Yeah, most of the horror comes from understanding that slavery at all is a cruel thing.
Yeah. And like we were talking about with like the atmosphere, like our third topic being separate. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think we can, again, like, we're not linking these two things. I think this absolutely was treated with care. Which, that's wild, but I really think it was.
Keeping in mind Oh, I guess even with the pit guy.
Yeah. That's not this.
Well, no. The pit guy is an example of enslavement.
But I'm saying, like,
that's where we put him. We discussed him under enslavement, and
that's true.
So for me, the question would be: is the pit guy's situation treated with care? Because that's gonna be the barometer here. And I think that tips it to enough care.
I think it's enough in that case. Only because
also enough,
the author also went out of her way to make his specific things be like you cannot do that to a living human being in real life. Which I think kicks it over to the like suspension of belief, where it's enough care, because even if you can kind of a little bit like get a mental image for that scene, the fact that it's in a book and the fact that it is something that is not physically possible to do to torture a real life person, like you have to, like it's very easy to kind of go, I can't picture that.
And there's enough,
and I think that was intentional.
There's enough paragraphs beforehand of, are you gonna see? No, I don't want to see. Are you gonna see? No, I don't want to see. That like you could decide, you know what? I'm not gonna read this paragraph. Like there's enough leading up to it.
Yeah.
That it lets you know something bad is coming, and I think that part of that is how it's enough care.
I agree. I think there's definitely a mix of that, plus that like I said, like kind of that magical, like it's only possible because magic, and also like the details that are given in the description are pretty graphic, but they're not, like the language used is pretty bare bones. It's definitely like almost like a bullet point description. It's not this like artistic word picture.
It's the minimum needed to convey the horror of the image.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it doesn't keep rehashing it.
Yes.
So that's enough care. The ostracization, I think that was treated with care.
I think, yeah. I kind of said a little bit of this earlier, like in the actual topic too, but like this, when you read it, like the ostracization is there, but you as a reader, like me as a reader, at no point did I feel like I was being shut out, which is a big part of this one. So it's like, as far as like a reader experience, like you can feel and relate to her without it feeling painful.
Like there are books that try to convey the feeling of loneliness. This does not. You know what's happening, but it isn't that.
Yeah.
For Cruelty.
No.
No.
Nope. Intentionally no, I would say.
Yeah, it's weird. The cruelty is the point here. Yeah, it's not treated with care. It's not trying to be. If it were treated with care, then that would make it harder. It would feel like gaslighting the reader, I think, for this topic to have been treated with care. Because if they say, these people are terrible, and then we don't see it, we don't get any descriptions, it's just like, do we know? And it would have a very different feel, and it would make us think different things about everyone's motivations if we never actually saw it.
Yeah, I think it was definitely necessary to make it be a thing, but I mean, it's weird because I think this is our first one that's like this abstract. Like we literally describe this as an atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to do an atmosphere in a book without actually creating the atmosphere.
Exactly.
Like you can't describe an atmosphere. You have to show it, not tell it. And that's done very, very well, but it definitely pushes this into not treated with care.
Now that the main trio of our ratings is set, I realized that we have torture porn treated with care and severe not enough care, so I just want to check in and make sure that we like those ratings.
Oh, I think those are accurate.
Okay, all right.
I think that's why I was saying, like, this is wild, but I think that's actually accurate.
Given how we've treated these matrices before, yes.
Yeah, like, no, this
metrics before.
This is correct. This is accurate.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. But this is accurate.
Point of view.
Yeine.
Yep, it's
just Yeine.
Well, okay, for these traumas as we're discussing them, yeah, it's Yeine. There's some interstitial narration shenanigans where...
But that's a spoiler, and we're not going to talk about that.
Absolutely. So other than the interstitial shenanigans, it's Yeine for the whole book.
Yeah. She's our point of view forever. We need to do some more rotating point of views. I know I've said that like the last several episodes.
Well, we will.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. All right. The aspiring writer tip.
I just really want to highlight, I think, how much we have a topic that is literal descriptive torture porn that was treated with enough care.
And we've used the phrase torture porn in a non-sexual context, or like that's how we've set up this writing.
Yeah, but this is a literal torture porn.
Yes.
Like, that is not a hyperbole or a metaphor. Nope. Or that's a literal actual torture pornography scene in this book. And this topic was treated with care.
Yeah.
Like,
especially since enough of what would make it that for the character right in front of it, like, it's not sexy, it's not titillating.
No.
But you know it was for one of the people in the scene, and that's why we're saying that it kind of literally is that in the book.
Yeah, no, it is set up to be torturous, but it's also, like, there's so much of a... I don't know how to put this into it. I feel like the more we review these, and the more that we find books that have mild tortures, mild topics that are treated with no care and are really awful to read, and then we find, like, severe topics that are treated with so much care that it's like nothing to read about, but it's definitely not glossed over. It's just not painful. Like, the more that we come across these, like, the more I really feel that anytime I've ever seen an author, I mean, like, this is my opinion anyway. It's not like my opinion is changing. It's just reinforcing this for me. Anytime we see an author who's like, oh, well, you know, for realism's sake, I had to make this painful. Or I couldn't talk about that because it would hurt. like, these are...
There's ways around it.
There's ways around it, and, like, maybe, you know, that person isn't a good enough author to do that good a job. Maybe you're just not good at this yet. That's a possibility.
Which means write more and practice.
Which means write more. Yeah, it means don't pretend that you somehow can't. Like, I mean, and we're not reading. I mean, some of the books we've read have been not fun, but, like, a lot of these books are just, they have all these things in them, and they're really good books. They're really fun reads, including this one. And I don't know.
I love this one. I'm so glad we picked this. Neither of us had read it before, and I am loving this series so much. So,
granted, we've only published at this point 18 episodes as of today, while we're recording this on April 13th, 2020.
Public doesn't have the 18th episode yet, but yeah.
But we have put it up into the cloud. It is done. It is complete. We've only published 18 episodes. A lot of those are books that I've read before. But of the books that we have read or looked at or just like researched, of all of the things that we've looked at that I've never read before, this is the first series that I didn't already know about that I want to buy and own.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first new one that I'm like, I need this.
Good.
This is very well done.
Excellent. Some more gushing about how well N.K. Jemisin did than an actual writer tip, but
that's fine. Case, that's okay.
I'm cool with that. We really liked how this was done here. Favorite non-traumatic thing about the book?
I really like the setup for the different gods.
Oh, yeah.
And also, so this book very much has like a pantheon of gods, so to speak. Kind of a little bit. But this, let me say this. If N.K. Jemisin is pulling from an existing pantheon, it's not one of the ones that I hear about all the time. It's not the stereotype that is Greek, Roman, and a little bit Norse, and also that, like, it's very different. It's very, at least in my experience, unique, and it was really cool, and I liked reading about the different dynamics and the different things that they were in charge of, and seeing how those things kind of manifested in their personalities. It wasn't just like, you're a superhero and these are your godly powers and here's your dominion. It was very much like no, you react and act and talk and move and be this way because this is who you are, and it was just really cool to read. And in general, I like reading about pantheon of gods that are done interestingly like that, but this was not the same one that permeates Earth. So yeah, that was cool.
I love the depiction of Cien. Cien is so great. I really, really like the ambiguity on whether he's like this because he has embraced childhood in his aspect, or whether childhood was a fitting aspect because he's already like this.
Yeah.
I like that ambiguity. It's really well handled. I tend to interpret it as being more the first one. Like, he already trended in this way, but at whatever point he had to pick, he really just went for it rather than it picking him. That's how I feel about it. But I would totally see the point of anyone who wanted to argue in the different direction or have a slightly different, like, breakdown of it. I just really, really love him as a character, and the way his relationship is with Yeine is really cool and really interesting, and yeah, I liked having an intimate, non-sexual relationship portrayed. Mm-hmm. That was really, really cool.
Oh, can I throw in with that one?
Sure.
An intimate, non-sexual relationship that was treated as on par with potential sexual ones.
Yes.
As in
terms
not
of importance
lesser,
and emotional
not,
time.
Like, not lesser, not beneath, not like settling somehow, just as important. And yeah, that was cool.
And the book takes the time to untangle those.
Yes.
Because Yeine doesn't realize that that's really the kind of relationship that Cien is trying to have.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes the time to let you know, no, he's not trying to be sexual.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as I said, he's embraced childhood, so that would have been creepy. So no, he's explicitly not. And then, not that I want polyamory to be jealous or something, but given their situation, the way in which the jealousy is portrayed treats these relationships as having, as you said, as being on the same plane and like equivalent contenders for Yeine's time and attention. Love this trilogy. Halfway through, I love the series so far. Partway through book 2, really looking forward to next episode and getting to finish the book in order to do the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you in a fortnight. All music used in this podcast was created by Nicole as HeartBeatArt Co. and is used with permission.
You can follow us on Twitter at Books That Burn, all one word.
You can email us with questions, comments, or book recommendations at booksthatburn@yahoo.com.
Support us on patreon.com/booksthatburn. All patrons get access to our upcoming book list and receive a one-time shout-out.
You can leave us an iTunes review. This helps people to find the show.
And find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.